Hi, my name's Kate Proctor. I work for Save the Children UK. I'm here today with Ola Labib, a British Sudanese comedian, writer and actress. We're here to discuss the 3-year anniversary of the conflict in Sudan, and thanks for joining us. As we spoke to you last year about the war and what it meant to you, and since that time, what has the last year been like for you, and as the conflict has continued to unfold?
So a lot of my family, when the war happened, they fled. So some of them left and went to Egypt. Some of them were in the Gadarif camps. Some of my family, unfortunately, died, were killed specifically in the war. Some were displaced and some were missing. And a year later, now that they had the capacity to come back to the village, some of them have come back to the village. Unfortunately, there's limited electricity, there's limited resources, but they're in a situation where they had to go back. So my uncle was missing. I talked about it last time. He still hasn't been found. It's been over a year later, so it's very difficult to stay positive. But just because certain regions have a level of stability as such, that trauma and that just everything they went through, that still carries out until now. And the after effects of everything that happens, it's still on them now. You know, the people that didn't go to school for 2-3 years, schools even still not opening. So even though there is relative safety in some regions, there is a lot of instability and violence in other regions. And I think it's so important that people see Sudan as a whole. You know, we have this concept of, oh, well, it's okay in this region now. It doesn't matter. Unless there's peace in all of Sudan, then there's no peace at all in Sudan.
Thank you. So we're 3 years into the conflict. What does it feel like to reach this moment?
So unfortunately, war has been going on in Sudan for decades. The war in Darfur, the war that happened in South Sudan, the war that happened in the Blue Nile, and even going back to the Nuba Mountains and in Nubia when the High Dam was built and regions of parts of Nubia were flooded. Like, there's always been conflict and war in Sudan, but this is the most current. As much as this war is devastating, people need to acknowledge that this war has been happening for decades.
And how does it feel when you're reflecting on it now?
I imagined that by 3 years, things would have at least settled a little bit, that we'd start seeing changes. But actually 3 years later, I feel like I'm in the same place as I was a year later or 2 years later. I don't see much as stabilised, to be honest. Yeah.
And the world is still failing to give Sudan and its people the attention that the country deserves, that its people deserve. And why do you think that is?
Because people don't care about African lives. That's the reality of it. People are desensitised to the suffering of African people. They think this is normal for us. They think poverty is normal for us. They think violence and wars are normal for us. So when they see this, they're desensitised to it. And it's a harsh reality, but it is the reality. People are desensitised to the suffering of African people.
As clear as that.
As clear as that, yeah.
So you're narrating a story about 2 young brothers in Sudan whose lives were changed when they were hit by an explosion. What did you feel when you heard their story?
Unfortunately, it's a story that we hear over and over again. On the way here, there was a report that a school was bombed and 20 children died. As devastating as it is, it's becoming like a daily thing. So it gets really soul destroying. It genuinely gets, I think, again, it's sensitization and normalization. like you're on social media and I see people see it and they scroll. It's because, oh, we've seen it already. We know what's going on. But this is not the same thing happening. This is a different scenario, different people dying every single day. So, yeah, unfortunately, it's another devastating story from a different family. I myself, I lost my second cousin during the war, and he was as young as they are. And I think, again, it all comes down to empathy because we've experienced it firsthand. We know how difficult it is. So reading the story of other boys who are of a similar age group, it hits home that little bit more. And to think that even 3 years on, this is still happening and nothing's been done about it. It's so difficult to live your day by day and know that this is still happening back home. Yeah.
It must feel like you have two lives sometimes, like the one here and the one there, and trying to make it all fit together. Must be very heavy.
I think a lot of diaspora, and we do talk about this a lot of Sudanese diaspora feel like they're living double lives. They feel like they're living double lives. You know, you've got to live your life, but then you have that guilt of, even like during Eid, it was Eid like on the weekend and we're celebrating, and you know, you feel you have a level of guilt that how can I celebrate when I know that there are people back home who are still living in instability or living in fear. But yeah, you feel like you're living a double life. Yeah.
And 3 years on from the start of the war, what do you want people to know, to understand, and to remember about Sudan and the children that are growing up there now?
I want them to know that that's their reality. Like, this is literally their reality. If they're not dying, they're getting injured. If they're not getting injured, they're not getting their education. They're not progressing in their lives. So there is deprivation, whether it's physical, emotional, educational, social. They are being deprived of living normal childhoods. And this is something that people need to grasp. Even if they're not dying, they're injured. Even if they're not injured, they're not living their lives. Kids deserve to live a normal childhood. They deserve basic necessities of safety, food, water, education. They're entitled to these basic necessities and they're not even getting that.
Mm-hmm. And what do you hope that the world does next?
Make this world. It's got too many problems.
But if there was a message for world leaders, what might it be?
World leaders? I don't know what to say to them either. They know what's going on. They know what they need to do. They know what they've got their fingers in, and they know that they have a level of power to stop this. So they don't need me to tell them. They need to look in the mirror. They need to look at what's happening, and they need to talk to themselves. I don't need to tell them anything. If I need to tell them what they need to do, they are in the wrong positions.
And so right now, what do you need the world to do right now to help people in Sudan?
It's not easy to watch. It's not easy to listen to. You know, people are always saying, oh, but we see it all the time, And all I want to say is, like, it's important to be in the know so you know what's going on, so that, you know, if there's anything you can do to help, or even if you work from someone who's from the region, just ask them, are you okay? I think because it's been 3 years, things start to get forgotten about because there's always, unfortunately, other things happening. But just be aware that even if it's 3 years later, it is still happening. So just check in with people from Sudan. Just be like, are you, like, how are you doing? It starts to, when you hear less people talking about it, it makes you feel like, oh, they don't care anymore. it was a thing of 3 years ago, like no one cares anymore. So talking about it at least makes us feel that it's still important, like Sudanese lives are still important. I would say that.
Yeah, so if you know anyone with a connection to Sudan,
Yeah.
just ask them how they are.
Just ask how they are.
And can you tell me about some of your favourite memories of Sudan?
Favourite memories of Sudan is definitely going to my village, spending time with family, people gathering when it's time to drink coffee, qahwa, jabana. That's like something that we're like really known for in Sudan. People would have their lunch and then everybody would gather at one household and we'd all have coffee together. And my grandmother, she used to roast the coffee. So you just smell, even now, like if my mum roasts coffee, it literally just takes me back. That sense of community, that sense of belonging, that sense of family, that sense of the only care they have in the world is, okay, what are we having for dinner today? So it's kind of that like carefree, living in the moment vibe that you have back home with your family. Yeah.
That's nice. What do you wish more people understood about Sudan? The place, the people, the country?
I wish that people knew that what's going on now, it's not normal for them. This is something I talk about a lot. What's happening in Sudan, it's not normal for them. You know, Sudan has got a lot of history of war, but we are really resilient people, and I want people to know that this is not normal, not just for Sudanese people, but this isn't normal for anybody. I do feel there's a lot of desensitization to everything that's happening. You know, people see it on the news and they're like, oh yeah, but this is normal for them. They're always going through wars. But I wish that people would know that actually, you know, changes can be made, and I wish they saw the happy side and the potential happiness that Sudanese people can be living in, so that it motivates for changes to come.
Thank you, Ola. Thank you for sharing your perspective on the war in Sudan currently, but also some of the experiences of your family there as well. Thank you for your time.